Hello, everyone. Welcome to another launch interview conversation. Today we have the amazing Dr. Davin E. Brown. And Dr. Brown, thank you very much for having us or being
Thank
with
you.
us today. Dr. Davin E. Brown is the Vice President of Student Services at Sacramento City College with 20 years experience in higher education, specifically in student affairs, student services, and instruction. Dr. Brown is unapologetic about her commitment to educational equity and improving outcomes for Black students. Her professional experience includes serving as the Dean of Student Success for Folsom Lake College, Director of Student Engagement and Outreach for Sacramento State, and Student Affairs Officer for the University of California, Riverside. UC, right on. Her varied teaching experience includes teaching graduate level courses for Drexel University, Concordia University, and Sacramento State University. A third generation native San Franciscan, Dr. Brown prides herself on being an authentic, student centered leader. In addition to her service in higher education, Dr. Brown serves as a board member for the Sacramento Black Chamber of Commerce and a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Aha.
Kiwi.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Although she wears many hats, her favorite role is mama to one son who is wrapping up his junior year at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. Words Dr. Brown lives by are if it ain't beneficial, it's artificial. I
That's
had the
right.
ability to see Dr. Brown in action with her sister circle group this past couple weeks ago at the Amend conference in Los Angeles. And I heard that motto of hers for the first time. And I was like, if that ain't some truth right there.
Thank
Oh, my goodness. So, again, Dr. Brown, thank you so much for being with us today.
you for having me.
Right on. So, we're going to
Thank
just
you.
jump right on in. I know we got the bio and got the info, but
Mhm.
would love to just hear from you. Who else is Dr. Davin Brown?
Oh my goodness. So many layers, I like to say.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. For one, I appreciate the question because depending on when and how you interact with folks, they really only get to see one layer of you, right?
Hmm.
Um, in my instructional lane, I'm just simply Dr. B to the students. And my student services, student affairs leadership lane, I'm Dr. B, I'm Dav, I'm the vice president, I'm a listening ear, I'm all of those things. At home, I'm just mama.
Yeah.
I am a soror, I am a sister, I am a daughter, um, I am a friend. And so, because there's so many layers, what makes up Davin Brown, I like to believe is beautifully complex.
Huh.
And I've enjoyed every single step and opportunity I've experienced on this road in every hat that I've been able to wear. And certainly open to unpacking a little bit about that today.
Amen. Amen. Right on. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Yes. Today, we are definitely highlighting, obviously, this is in commemoration of Women's History Month. And so we thank you for being with us. So if we
Mhm.
can go back, just growing
Sure.
up, let's say middle school, high school,
Whew.
what was your impression of going to college? Like, were you in a college going environment, family, community? What was that like for you growing up? How
Yes.
did you envision going to college, if at all?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that because as I reflect on it, I think oftentimes when folks would ask me, did you always know you were going to college? Was it an expectation? My response immediately would be yes. But as you ask me that question now, and I really sit with it, harkening back to my middle school years, I'd have to say no.
Mm,
I wasn't ever afraid of college. I've always been in love with education and the liberation that it afforded me, right? Through acquiring more knowledge, through gaining more experiences, through meeting more people. And I never wanted that to end. But in middle school, I didn't realize that college would be an extension of my educational journey. It
mm,
wasn't really it wasn't a part of what I was considering at the time. And in large part because I was dealing with things that no sixth, seventh, eighth grader should be dealing with. I was challenged with my parents' challenges with substance abuse, my father's
Mm,
habitual incarceration, me being raised by my grandmother, and that generation gap that created some challenges in the late 80s, early
mm,
90s. My sister being away, my older sister being away at high school. So not having an older role model in the home with me while my mama was away, and just being there with my grandmother who's significantly older than me. Right. And my grandmother did not attend college. However, her youngest child, which was my uncle, was the only one who graduated from college. So that was my only knowledge or awareness of post-secondary education. So to some degree, I thought about it, but not very intentionally until I got to high school. And it wasn't my entire high school journey. It was the second part of my high school journey. So my father passed when I was 16 years old, tragically. And I had to go live back with my grandmother. I'd been away from my grandmother for maybe 3 years with my mother, and my mother had fallen back into her addiction. I was headed to live with my father, and then he passed away, which meant I had to go live again with my maternal grandmother. My maternal grandmother at the time made the decision to use the Social Security from my father to pay for me to go to private high school. And she told me, you have two choices. You either go to St. Ignatius or Sacred Heart, but you're not going to public school.
mm.
And as a 16-year-old, I was devastated. I was trying to go to Washington High School with my cousins. Like, all of my family went to Wash, right? I thought,
Wow.
this is a legacy. How can I not be a part of the legacy? When I tell you it was the greatest decision that could have been forced upon me by my grandmother, it really was. It was a game changer. She um unselfishly took the resources that were acquired from my father's Social Security to pay for my private education the last 2 years of high school. That is what set the framework for me to go to college, because I ended up going to St. Ignatius College Prep.
Mm.
The expectation of everyone at that institution was going to college. And so it was my junior year of high school that I began to lock in on what the next step would be for me. And I began to fall in love with my love for English and creative writing, and decided to pursue a degree in English at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Wow. Wow.
So
You lived, it sounds like, two or three adult lives prior to college.
listen, yes, and I haven't heard it quite put that way, but it's accurate. I did. There was a lot of raising of myself that I had to experience. Also, the realization that I was in an environment at my high school where I was one of very few. I was
Mm,
one of very few Black folks, one of very few Black women, one of very few poor folks. So while my classmates are driving Range Rovers and Mercedes Benz to school, I'm
mm,
on public transportation, taking an hour, hour and a half just to get to school and back home. Right.
mm,
And
mm.
so my lived experience was very different, but the preparation, both on the academic side and the social side of the house, as well as the exposure to my life at home, coupled with my life at school, allowed me the ability to understand the importance of navigating different spaces,
Yeah.
right? And not necessarily code switching, but adjusting, and then ultimately leveraging the power that I've secured, or influence that I secured in code, in adjusting, to not code switching, but switching the code, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
Instead of making myself small to make other people feel comfortable, I would highlight what I needed as the more marginalized voice in that space. And I did that unapologetically. And that just kind of has traveled with me in my journey as a higher ed leader. And it all started in high school.
Yeah.
Really, it did.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Um, we when we talk about high school students making the transition into college, a lot of
Mhm.
students don't really know or have a definition for themselves or a vision for themselves of what success looks like into college.
Right.
They just say, okay, I'm going to set the goal to get to college, and then they get there. Did you know what success looked like for you coming into Cal State San Luis Obispo?
No, I didn't.
Huh.
I'm a first gen, right? My
Okay.
mom didn't graduate from college. My dad didn't graduate from college. My grandmother who raised me did not attend college. My uncle did attend, but he went to school in Oregon and then ended up moving to New York not soon after he had graduated, came back for a little bit and then went to Germany. So he's been around. He's been a great part of my life, right? He's like
Mhm.
the second dad. Um, but his exposure to college, being about 12 years older than I am, was not something that I got to take part in. So I had a
Mhm.
true first generation experience. And when you have a first generation experience, at least for me, what you hear from your loved ones is make sure you get your lesson, make sure you go to
Mhm.
class. That's all they know how to tell you.
Mhm.
They didn't have the knowledge and experience to prepare me for the social distractions. They didn't have the knowledge and experience to prepare me for the self-discipline, right? They could not tell me about the importance of making sure I tapped in and was aware of all the resources available to me and the orientation. But earlier you referenced that I was like three different adults during in high school. Those experiences and needing to be self-sufficient, I think is why I ended up being successful. And
Mhm.
I use the term successful loosely because I stumbled during
Mhm.
college, but because I was accustomed to being resourceful, I figured it out,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And that worked well for me, and it afforded me the opportunity to enjoy college in a comprehensive way. It wasn't solely about education. I became very involved in sorority life, became very involved in student government, had various on-campus jobs, served as a president of Black Student Union at an institution that had less
Mhm.
than 200 Black students, but more than 17,000 students in general. And so I got a lot of um, applied experience in student affairs, not knowing that that was setting the groundwork for that would catapult me into the industry or within higher ed, specifically student services and student affairs.
Mhm. Wow. Wow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Um, in that first year experience,
Hmm.
if you were to, and this is not prioritizing anyone, but if you were to just share with us a person who had a very significant impact on your first year experience coming into college. We know that if we had a whole hour, right, you could name a ton of folks, but can you give us an example of somebody who really had a significant impact on that first year experience, making that transition into college?
Sheesh. That's a really good question. I haven't thought about it. Like, was there someone who was significant to me in college? Yes. Who served as a template for me, a model, a mentor, very influential even today? Absolutely, yes. But she and I did not meet until my second year of college. My
Hmm.
first year of college was
And
akin to being thrown. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Just
No
let
problem.
me make sure I want to clarify this as well. In regards to a significant, when we say a significant impact on your FYE, your first year experience, doesn't necessarily mean it was a positive impact as well.
Right.
So I just want to, right, like,
Yeah. So as I'm thinking, I'm like, what experience was had a great impact on my first year experience? I would have to say first semester, I want to say a physics class that I failed.
okay,
That is when I knew that I was not as prepared as I thought I
okay,
was, despite attending a college prep high school. And it wasn't because SI didn't prepare me, it was because I wasn't prepared for the non academic responsibilities that needed to be managed, right? The
mm-hmm,
decisions to go to bed at a reasonable time, the decisions to study for your final exam, not cram, but be familiar with the information prior to your exams. Um, tapping into office hours with your instructors, going to the writing center or tutorial services. I wasn't familiar with those things in large part. One, I'm a first gen student. Two, because in high school, it's just in your face. When you transfer to college, you have to create your own schedule. You have to figure out where all of these services are. You may not even be aware. As a first gen, you're not even aware that these resources are available because you're assuming you're landed there. You're an adult now. You're supposed to just figure it out. And so it took a little bit of stumbling. It took me failing my first midterm and ultimately that class. I mean, heartbreaking to get an F in your first semester of college and then begin to question whether or not you're supposed to be there,
Right.
especially when you're one of only 200 Black students in 17,000. Like
Right.
the mind Olympics that you're going through, right? Being so far away from San Francisco in Central California, where there's nobody that looks like you, it was a challenge. And I'm failing classes. Clearly, I'm not cut out for this. But I then began to explore opportunities to meet people. And that landed me in meetings with NSBE. Now, I majored in English, but it wasn't very many Black organizations, let alone Black students. And NSBE was very popular, very active, the National Society of Black Engineers. And so despite not being an engineer or scientist, I joined NSBE. And that is what kept me together through the first and second years of my college experience, being around other Black students, irrespective of their major course of discipline, being in community with them, and then being able to tap into their mentors who were in the minority engineering program and faculty in the engineering program and things of that nature, because they loved us as Black students. They didn't care what our major was. And that experience changed my trajectory.
Right on. Excuse me. Thank you.
No
And
problem.
if you can, please share with us that person that you were talking about in your second year.
Yes. So the second year, I realized soon I need to get a job because my little $100 allowance and my grandmother re-ing up my MCI calling card was not cutting it. And so I didn't work my first year, but I did work the second year.
Okay.
And I worked in what would be equivalent to food services. I ran the cashier, and there was a multitude of different food items in this food court. There was a woman, a Black woman, who would come through my line every single day, and all she simply said was hi to me. How you doing? And I would ring her up. I'm like, how you doing? And she'd be like nicely dressed. I knew she was an administrator of some sort, but I had no idea where. And so our interactions every day became a little longer. How are classes? Classes are great. And one day randomly, she said to me, would you prefer to work in an office opposed to here? And I'm like, who doesn't want to go somewhere and not smell like chicken every day? Of course. So unbeknownst to me, she served as the executive director of Associated Students Incorporated, which is the student government arm within the CSU system. Very powerful, influential side of the house within the CSU system.
Yeah.
I applied for a customer service rep position in her office. I got it, and that set the pace for everything that would happen for me. I ultimately pledged the same sorority as her. I ultimately became the Black Student Union president. I ultimately served on the WASC accreditation team for diversity at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Wow.
I became a part of undergrad level NASPA associations. I worked in the Office of Multicultural Services. I became so exposed to the life of student affairs based on my relationship with her that I began to model my next level pursuit. So she went to Cal State San Bernardino to get a master's degree. I went to Cal State San Bernardino to get a master's degree. She got a doctorate in educational leadership. I got a doctorate in educational leadership because remember, my grandmother, who was very influential and very smart, didn't have a college education. My mother was struggling with substance abuse. So I didn't have anyone closer to my age, but old enough to be a positive influence to give me the guidance that a young Black woman needed. And Dr. Sancia Lily
Hmm.
is the one who provided that for me, and I'm forever grateful for her. She just retired from her post as the vice president of student affairs at the University of Texas at Austin. She had an amazing 30-year career. I'm super proud of her, super proud of the love, the care, the accountability, and the grace that she extended to me. And I'm grateful that she allowed me to be who I was, not necessarily needing to be a mini her, but being the best Davin that I could be.
Amen.
And I owe it to her.
Amen. Right on.
Yes. Yes.
If you don't mind me asking, like, how do you pay that forward, specifically
Great
with the
question.
young women professionals that you either supervise, mentor, or just talk to?
Hmm.
How do you do that?
Great question. For me, it's simple. It is my obligation and my pleasure at the same time to provide
Hmm.
mentorship to other people, specifically students. Um, Mentorship saved my life.
Hmm.
Mentorship has been a part of my life since elementary school. It really has. It's primarily always been women until I got into graduate school, my doctorate, actually. It's been primarily women, and it's been women of all backgrounds,
Hmm.
right? And I survived based on the relationships that I had with mentors, starting or favorite teachers, starting as early as first grade. I'm
Wow.
still very connected to my first grade teacher, Miss Coffee, on Facebook. My fourth grade teacher, Miss Thomas, we are not connected, but I remember the influence and the power that in her presence. Miss Davis was my fifth grade teacher. Miss Jackson was my seventh grade counselor. Miss Elizabeth Swarthout was my junior year English teacher who took me to see Maya Angelou for the first time. When I fell in love with Maya. And then I got to college and met Sansia Lilly. After that, Angela Luke was my mentor in my master's program. I then went on to my doctorate program. I worked with my chair, Kathy Geller, who was amazing. My boss, Patricia Worley at Sac State, was outstanding, alongside a colleague, Dr. Marceline, another colleague, Dr. Robin Carter, were exceptional. And then I landed in the community college where I had the great pleasure and blessing to become a mentee and little sister to the incomparable Melanie Dixon, who has served as an outstanding mentor and sister friend for me. And so women of all backgrounds have poured into me. It is my pleasure and obligation to do the same for those who come and lift as I climb. And I find great joy in that.
Amen. Thank you for calling
Thank
all of
you.
those amazing names into this space.
Thank you.
I've met probably a couple of those, I
Mhm.
think, but amazing to be able to know you and know that those amazing women have poured that into you. How lucky
Yes.
you are.
Yes. And I
Amen.
love them all. They're all still
Oh, right
here.
on. Yes.
Yes.
Blessings. Blessings.
Yes.
So, making the transition, you made the transition into higher ed as
Yes.
far as a student. What was that transition like coming out as an undergrad, then thinking about whether it's grad school, professional? What was that transition like for you?
Right. Exciting in that I wanted to be for others what someone was for me, and I just needed to figure out how I did that.
Hmm.
And so I did what a lot of folks do fresh out of out of college, is went into sales. I took a job for 6 months in the technology sales division of a company by the name of Telegy, I believe,
Mm.
and worked in sales for 6 months. And as much as I love to talk, I don't want to sell anybody anything. That's not my jam. That is not fun at all. But I knew I needed to get some money and pay some bills to prepare me for what my next step was going to be. So I began to explore positions in higher ed, got my resume together, sent it to Sansia. She took a look at it. I really modeled it after, listen, she has a doctorate and is, I don't know, her third, fourth, fifth position. And I have a resume formatted just like hers. because I figured if it worked for her, it would work for me. And it did. I got my first position with the University of California, Riverside as a student organizations coordinator. And I served there for about 3 years. I take pride in the work that I did there, establishing the university's Black commencement ceremony, which still is in existence to this day. When I was there, there was not one. 2 young women came and said, we need a Black grad. I said, I have experience making it happen. And let's be clear, it didn't come without resistance. Oh, it did. The vice president at the time pulled me in the office, asked me what I was doing, because, there are a lot of folks who don't understand the importance of holding space for historically marginalized communities who don't often get to participate in a way that mirrors, acknowledges, and celebrates their achievements based on the things that they went through. Completing a degree for the Black community, for the brown community, for the queer community, for the API community is less about the paperwork and more about achieving an accomplishment and paving the way for those who come after you. And so the manner in which that is celebrated or honored in a traditional commencement experience is not consistent with our journey. And we need to have celebratory experiences that allow us to be us. And I shared that with the vice chancellor of student affairs at the time. I'm not sure how well received it was, but he's not there. But the Black commencement is still there. So there's that.
There's that.
And so as a result, I've been unapologetic about creating, cultivating space, safe space, and celebratory space for Black students all of my career. All of my career.
Right on. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing how, that whole thing with coming out of undergrad, and we need to get some experience. And I went into sales too and said, no. This ain't
right.
it.
And the thing is, I leveraged my student experience to prepare me or as a means to get me in the door for my entry level student affairs experience, right? I think a lot of times folks say things like, well, I've only been a student assistant, or I don't have full-time experience. The reality is those people don't know that.
Right.
They have no idea. You highlight your experience and what you've done. You don't sell yourself short by answering a question in an interview saying, oh, I've only supervised student assistants. That's not what they asked you. They asked you if you have supervisory experience. Your response is, yes, I do. I have supervisory experience. That includes the recruitment, training, evaluation of members of my team. Right. And once you get past this notion of having to make yourself small, the doors will open for you. And I learned that from Sansia. It's nothing wrong. She would tell me, cream rises to the top. But when it's time to toot your horn, because you only get to stage one time.
Yes. Yes. Right on. I heard that. Amen. Thank you. Shoot.
Thank you.
Make me run out of here. Go do something. I'm excited. Right on.
Thank you.
Graduate school.
Yes.
Why did you do it? And when you were choosing, how did you choose what you wanted to research or focus on?
Right. I did it because I thought I had to. I'm just, as the youngsters say, keep it 100. Okay. I did it because I felt I had to. Remember, I had a mentor who had done it. She was the closest thing to a template. It worked for her, so surely it will work for me if I do what she did. I had no real knowledge and insight. And at that time, we're talking about in the early 2000s, graduate level education was necessary to make more money and to advance, especially in the field of student affairs. And so it's almost like your little baby bachelor's degree means nothing when you get your master's degree. And so I took 1 year off of undergrad and started a master's program. So I finished undergrad in August, technically, of 2001, and started my master's program in January 2003. Okay. And I was finished with that at the end of 2004. And I did it because I felt like I had to. In order to make myself more marketable, because contrary to popular belief, people believe that student affairs might be a large industry, a large field. It is not, and everyone knows everyone. Right? We only have a few professional development organizations, and we all go to them all the time. It's like a low-key family reunion that you go to every year. And so it's important that you get your experiences soon, but your education has to be comparable because it's within the field of education. And we believe ourselves to be educators outside of the classroom, and educators have to be educated. They have to have the formal education. And so that was really the basic purpose, or the reason why I pursued graduate level education. Now, my doctoral work, very much the same. I was trying to figure out, do I want to go the route of instruction and become tenured faculty? Or do I want to reach a level that allowed me to make decisions that remove barriers for students that look like me? And I knew the only way I could do that was with a doctorate. And that was my motivation for pursuing a doctorate.
Right on, right on. Thank you very much.
No
Can you share with us what you researched? What was
Absolutely.
in your program?
So again, unapologetic about improving outcomes for Black students. By the time I started my doctorate, I had a son who was 7 years old, turning 8.
Okay.
And it was important to me that my research be connected to the thing that got me through, which was mentorship, but the thing that motivated me the most, which was my young Black son. So my research was on the experiences that Black men who attended predominantly white institutions had with mentorship and the implications on their undergraduate success. That was my research. Qualitative study with just over a dozen participants from all over the nation who attended predominantly or historically white institutions. And I say historically white institutions because we now have institutions that might be majority students of color. However, the structural inequities, the framework, the processes, the policies that exist are rooted in whiteness. And so the students' experiences, despite the fact that their demographics may be diverse, their policies, their practices, their faculty are not. And unless you're attending an HBCU, you ain't getting a Black student. You're not getting a Black college experience in California just because the administration is Black. It's not going to happen. Right. And so that's why I framed some of them as historically white institutions.
Amen. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Knowing that you have spent time in higher ed at both the staff, faculty, and administration level, what would you share as maybe things to think about to help increase student success and to increase a culture of student success at those three levels, specifically, right, for leadership, dealing with institutional policy, faculty members in regards to instruction, and then in staff or services, staff that are providing resources and services for students?
Right. What I would share. What I would share, I think overall for all three areas, is the institution.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
I'm sorry. Can I make sure I clarify that question?
Sure.
For those three areas, what's important to build trust with today's students to help increase student success?
Okay. So then my answer wouldn't be different. Well, so I'm glad. I'm like, oh, he's going to ask me a different. What's important to build success to build trust in those that leads to success for today's student is to create a culture that is student ready, right? So historically, institutions of higher education have operated from the position that students have to be ready for college. No, the institution has to be ready for the student. The thing that is constant in the world, and certainly specifically in higher education, is change. The whole purpose of institutions of higher ed is to onboard and help students matriculate through their collegiate experience for the purpose of completion and getting out, and then onboarding new students, helping them matriculation, lead them to completion, and get them out. That means you are going to get iterations of students every single year. Their experiences are going to be different. The world is going to be different. So we have to be able to change. We have to be nimble enough to understand what students' needs are. And we cannot be so stuck in our ways, so naive to believe that the manner in which we experience college should be the same way that our students or our children or our children's children experience college. And so whether you are classified staff or professional, whether you are a faculty or whether you are an administrator, you have to make a commitment to making the institution ready to receive the student, opposed to suggesting that the student has to be ready for the institution.
You are really talking about some things that can really cause folks who haven't been thinking this way to really stretch.
They'll be all right. They'll be all right. There's a difference between a student affairs professional and a person that works in student affairs. A student affairs professional understands the layers, the complexities, the experiences of students, and moves accordingly. A person who works in student affairs is someone who just happened to land in that job and does not buy into the theory, the knowledge, the information that drives this career field. And as much as I love all folks that work in higher ed, you got to make a commitment to the work to be successful at doing the work. And if you don't, you have no business being in the industry, because our students need you. Whether you're a classified professional, faculty, or an administrator, they need you. They're modeling their behaviors after you. I met someone in the cafeteria line that I began to model my behaviors after just because she said hi to me, and then began to model my career trajectory, the manner in which I approach parenting after her, simply because she said hi to me. We have so much power and influence. We have to be aware of that, and we have to use our superpowers for good and not for evil. This isn't a job. This is service. And our students deserve service with a smile. And so.
With that, I think that we're done here.
Okay.
You have literally sewn it up, and it is an honor to have been able to have this conversation with you and to have you share that knowledge, that wisdom, the ability to stretch, the ability to think differently, the wisdom and the gems that you shared today to help not only those that are in school, students, or thinking about going to college, but also the professionals that are responsible for their success. I have no doubt that all who see this podcast, this conversation, will take something that they will be able to take into their jobs, into their responsibilities, and apply immediately.
I hope so. Thank you.
I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dr. Davin E. Brown, it has been a true honor and a privilege to have you with us this evening.
Thank you so very much for having me. I truly appreciate it.
Right on. Thank you.